Ladies and gentlemen, this is TVP World. You're watching another edition of Break the Fake, where we debunk fake news and combat false narratives. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee, and let's get rolling. So today is February 24, 2026, 4 years since Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine. If you line up the statements from Kremlin media and officials over these 1,462 days, the storyline is almost cinematic. In the beginning, everything was bright and loud. Then it became chaotic, and now it feels confused, defensive, slightly desperate. The messaging evolved, the reality did not. So at the start of the full-scale invasion, the Kremlin's rhetoric was simple and upbeat. We will quickly capture Kyiv. The broadcast sounded triumphant, confident, assured of a lightning victory. Then reality intervened. The famous 3-day forecast aged like milk, and it stretched into 1,462 days of chaos, destruction, and loss. The quick parade turned into a grinding war, and the optimism on state TV had to start working overtime.
Понимали, что в горячей войне мы Украину победим за 2 дня. Чего ее побеждать-то, господи, ну Украина, подавили эти огневые точки, вот мы в рекламную паузу это обсуждали.
Ну, я думаю, что его спонсоры западные, они же не могут существовать, они месяц не просуществуют, если прекратятся деньги и в широком смысле говоря патроны. Все закончится через месяц, 1,5-2.
And when it became obvious that the war would not end quickly, the talking point shifted. Suddenly, it was no longer about Ukraine. It was, we are told, about NATO. We are not against Ukraine, we are against NATO. Classic deflection. If you cannot explain why your plan failed, introduce a larger enemy. Move the blame outward, reframe the battlefield.
Хватит придумывать себе мира, которого нет. Финн говорит, Россия должна быть уничтожена. Итальяшка это несчастная, сумасшедшая, фашистская.
Вся Европа это говорит.
А мы должны делать вид, что ничего не происходит.
Нет,
а мы
должны делать, что не происходит. Мы воюем.
Они несерьезные люди.
Мы воюем на Украине.
Мы воюем не на Украине. Мы воюем с НАТО. Поймите это уже.
Я все-таки хочу, чтобы мы сами себе напоминали каждый вечер, когда мы сидим на кухнях и говорим: да что ж такое, почему мы до сих пор не взяли Киев, почему мы до сих пор не взяли Львов, почему. Я хочу, чтобы мы каждый день себе напоминали, что мы воюем ни с какой не Украиной, что Украину мы победили в первые 2 недели. И, как говорит президент Трамп, война бы продлилась еще 3 дня, если бы не мы. Что мы воюем со всем так называемым цивилизованным западным миром. Мы одни, впервые в нашей истории.
And now the rhetoric had drifted again, this time even further from reality. Quote, war is an internal conflict is the new slogan. An internal conflict. As if Russia were not the aggressor, but some concerned bystander observing a conflict in neighboring territories. This narrative does useful work. It shrinks responsibility, it blurs agency, it suggests neutrality while Russian forces continue shelling Ukrainian cities. The storylines twist and contradict themselves, voices on state media argue, rephrase, improvise, and the viewer is left staring at the screen wondering what exactly is being sold today.
Войну в Европе чужими руками устранить конкурентов. Мы не воюем с народом Украины, об этом я уже много раз говорил. Сам народ Украины стал заложником киевского режима и его западных хозяев, которые фактически оккупировали эту страну в политическом, военном, экономическом смысле.
See, this is the real evolution of Russian propaganda. Grand promises quietly morph into layered excuses. From Kyiv in 3 days to we're fighting NATO to calling the full-scale invasion an internal conflict. The narrative just keeps adjusting because reality does not. The Kremlin expected to be greeted with flowers, it expected resistance to collapse. Instead, the Ukrainian army has been defending itself for 4 years, adapting, learning, receiving support from allies, and continuing to fight. What was framed as a lightning operation has become a protracted war, and in the end, the decisive factor was never television rhetoric, it was the resilience of the Ukrainian people. The Kazakh government has announced that 3 thermal power plants in Kokshetau, Semy, and Ust-Kamenogorsk will be built in cooperation with Chinese partners now instead of Russian ones, as previously planned. Back in 2024, an intergovernmental agreement stipulated that a Russian contractor would participate in constructing these facilities. It was the blueprint. But in 2026, Kazakhstan reoriented the project towards China. On paper, it is an infrastructure adjustment. In reality, it is another marker of Moscow's declining influence in the region. For the Kremlin, joint energy projects are never just business. They are leverage. Russia actively promotes such projects across post-Soviet and African countries, repeating the message that there is no way around us. Kazakhstan, while formally maintaining allied relations with Russia, has begun to gradually limit that influence. Alongside shifting these power plans towards China, it plans to lower the status of the Russian language and replace trade with Moscow with other brand new economic partners. Kazakhstan is demonstrating that energy policy is political strategy. Russia is discovering that influence cannot simply be preserved through old agreements. China is signaling that it is ready to occupy space Moscow once treated as guaranteed. For Kazakhstan, this is about strengthening independence. For Moscow, it is a reminder that even brotherly projects do not come with eternal loyalty clauses. And while the Kremlin watches carefully, Kazakh thermal power plants are moving forward. This time, without Moscow holding the switch. Russian disinformation operations are pounding out even more AI slop in the service of propaganda. A fresh wave of campaign is circulating online, showing alleged Ukrainian military personnel describing a catastrophic situation on the front lines, complaining about lack of support, saying they were abandoned by their command. There's just one detail missing. Some of these soldiers do not exist outside of a rendering engine. The formula is deliberate yet repetitive. A tired face, a ragged uniform, a muffled voice, dramatic music humming in the background. Everything calibrated to manufacture hopelessness. But look closer and the crack starts to show. Unnatural facial expressions, lip movements that do not quite sync, and often the so-called demoralized soldier look almost too cinematic. Almost as if casting happened not at a military registration office, but inside a computer graphics studio. Obviously, all this is done to create the impression that control within the Ukrainian armed forces has collapsed. Plant doubt, spread fatigue, make society question what it sees and whom it trusts.
От панове друг. Манюня, що тобі дружбана привез? Що з вами робить, пани? Що робить з вами?
Звертаюся до нашого командування. Учителі 43-ї бригади. Учителі Верховної Ради, того Зеленського, гнойного. Чому от ми зараз сидимо на позиціях втрьох, навіть вдвох, он поранений у нас тіп сидить вже тиждень, ми йому допомогти не можемо, ГВАК не можуть організувати. Кажуть, взагалі чуєш? Ніякого постачання, ніякого ГВАКу. Сидіть, подихайте. Нам на вас так і кажуть, командування наше. А тим часом дітки з Верховної Ради по Євросоюзу там шастають. Да йдіть за таку країну воювати. Пошли ви в жопу.
The strategic aim is pretty clear. Undermine trust in the Ukrainian armed forces, sow despair among both the military and civilians, create the illusion of internal division. They cannot break through defenses on a battlefield, so they target morale in an attempt to erode psychological resilience. The damage to Ukrainian morale is questionable so far, but honestly, if this keeps up, the real casualty is going to be the hardware market. I mean, 2 sticks of RAM are $900 because of this, by the way. And with that, we conclude this edition of Break the Fake. But for more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.